Hi everyone, I'm Danielle. Welcome to the channel. If you haven't already done so, hit the subscribe button and let's get started. Okay, today's video has been a long time in the making. I first came across this book when I saw the author sit down with Oprah Winfrey for a Super Soul Sunday. And when I saw that, I want to say that was like December of last year. So December 2023. When I first saw it pop up on my YouTube feed, I was like, oh, clear my schedule, I'm watching it. And I loved it. And I just was like, okay, when the book comes out or when I get a chance, I will get that book and read it. I finally got around to reading this lovely book called Think You'll Be Happy. Think You'll Be Happy, Moving Through Grief with Grit, Grace, and Gratitude. And it's by Nicole Avant. Nicole Avant is a philanthropist, businesswoman, filmmaker, and former diplomat. After a career in entertainment and political fundraising, she served as the United States ambassador to the Bahamas under President Obama. She has produced the critically acclaimed films The Black Godfather and Trees of Peace and 6888, a Tyler Perry movie about an all-female, all-black battalion in World War II. I haven't seen that. She lives in Los Angeles with her husband Ted, father Clarence, and their dogs. Just for clarity, The Black Godfather was produced by her and it's streaming on Netflix. Her father is the Black Godfather. His name was Clarence Avant. He has since passed away. At the time that this book went to print, he was still alive. He passed shortly after. In this book, she talks about him in present tense because at the time that she was writing it, he was still alive, but her mother had passed. So her mother, Jacqueline Avant, December 1st, 2021 was when she passed. She was violently murdered in her home. And I remember being in the gym and it was December 2021. There's a huge row of TVs in my gym. And I remember looking up and the majority of the televisions in the gym were focused on Jacqueline Avant. In today's video, I want to share some of the parts that stood out to me the most in this book. Okay, so the book is entitled Think You'll Be Happy. Think You'll Be Happy is actually the last text message Nicole received from her mother, Jacqueline. Nicole's mom, she had made Nicole a sweet potato pie. And so I think she had forgotten it at the house. And so her mom was saying to come pick it up. And she said the last text she sent her was, think you'll be happy. Like, I think you'll be happy about the taste of this sweet potato pie. I think it mirrored the way Nicole is navigating grief. It's almost like she's willing herself. There's a level of discipline she has when it comes to her grief journey in terms of she's willing herself to move forward and keep going in her day with grit. And she's like, I'm just going to keep going and I'm going to think my way, feel my way into happiness. So I think it's not just, I think you'll be happy with this. It's like, I'm going to think my way to happiness as well, which was motivating in some ways because it's like the mind is so powerful. But I think I love that she also acknowledged like, look, this is hard. It takes supernatural strength and a different type of will to keep going after experiencing deep, deep loss. She is heavily reliant on her faith and scripture to pull her through. There was scripture in almost every chapter, if not multiple times in each chapter. She doesn't really, I don't think she claims Christianity per se, because I noticed she talked a lot about like the universe and light and the divine. So I'm not sure exactly if she's claiming a specific religion, but when I say she's in her word, she had scripture for days. Because of who Nicole's father was, Nicole's very well connected. Quincy Jones is her godfather. Her friends were like Gwyneth Paltrow. And just before the Obamas went to Hawaii for Christmas, they were like, we're not going to Hawaii until we stop to see the Avants and make sure they're okay and just connect with them. You are on a first name basis with the President of the United States. Multiple presidents of the United States. Very well connected. There was a lot of celebrity names that came up in the book. When we're talking about fame, when it comes to this family, we're not just discussing like the Clintons or the Obamas. On page 73, she said, I grew up in a house that had a revolving door of famous people coming to parties, to meetings, to see my father and mother, so I had plenty of opportunity to speak. So many people came to our living room. Ella Fitzgerald Josephine Baker, Maya Angelou, Diane Carroll, Cicely Tyson, James Baldwin, Harry Belafonte, the King family. Coretta Scott King wrote my parents to thank them for their marvelous contribution to the continuation of my husband's work. Alex Haley, Muhammad Ali came by regularly. Hank Aaron was a regular visitor too. She talks about Hank Aaron, and I was actually listening to the audio version, and my nephew was in the room, and we had just been talking about Hank Aaron the day prior. Isn't that like the odds? We were just talking about Hank Aaron. It was interesting because Hank Aaron was dealing with a lot of racism at the time because he had beat Babe Ruth's records. And you can imagine at that time, for a black man to beat a white man's records doesn't go over well. But her father was somebody who was very instrumental in supporting Hank Aaron and actually negotiating his endorsement deal with Coca-Cola, which is like, wow, you've put in work behind the scenes. It's amazing. Grief is such a personal journey. And so I wouldn't look at this book as a how-to guide to get through grief. I think this is a great way to read more about how somebody else got through their grief and is getting through their grief, because she's still not like, this happened in 2021, that she lost her mom and then she lost her dad a year or two afterwards. Like, so there's not that much of a gap. So this is an ongoing journey for her. She says, look, not all my days are great. She had one experience that she shared where her mom had holy water from the River Jordan. Was in a plastic bottle. I think it was on a dish that she kept the holy water, a bunch of her nice perfumes and like toiletries. And one day she was in a fit of rage and she went in her room. She picked up that platter of perfumes and holy water and she threw it across the room. Her husband was like, don't F up the holy water. And it was like, it's so funny that you have expletives and holy water in the same sentence, but I get what he was trying to say. Like, no, the precious holy water that was your mom's and it was from the River Jordan, don't throw that. Thankfully, because it was in a plastic bottle, it was saved. But she had a meltdown, and it was just showing the waves of what you can feel when you're in your grieving journey, where there's some days where you could be great and you feel like I can get through this and I'm good, and then there's other days where you're like, I want to blow something up. I'm furious. I'm mad. I'm all the emotions. And those kind of moments humanized her, because honestly, sometimes in the book, it came off like, you have it together. You have it all together and you are just trucking along in grief in a way that is just not relatable to me. By having these kind of moments in the book where she's like, no, I lost my ish sometimes. Like, I felt like I could not make it another day. There were some days I was like, I need a Xanax. There are some days I want to throw stuff. And she was honest about that. And I really appreciated that she shared some of those moments, because they happen in your grieving journey. There are certain components that I would offer some pushback on. She shared a story where she was driving and she was in traffic and she saw a man and an elderly woman in an alley. It looked like the man was, trying to intimidate the woman and assault her. And so Nicole's seeing this. Nicole's in her car, just so happened to see that. And so she was furious and enraged, and she turned her car and became Superwoman and was like going to confront the man in her car. And she was using her car to kind of intimidate him. And that was enough. When she was trying to intimidate him, that was enough time for the elderly woman to get away. But now she's face to face with this man, and he ends up running to a Goodwill store. She follows him and he proceeds to have like a mental breakdown, I guess. But what I gathered was he was pretending to be mentally unstable. She was saying all of this to say that she thinks that a lot of people use mental instability, mental illness to cover up wrongdoing, and saying that mental illness isn't an excuse for poor behavior. You need to be held accountable. She said something along those lines. I don't want to misquote her, but I understood what she was trying to say. Like, if you do a crime, you need to, I don't want to say pay the time. That's so corny, but you need to be held responsible. While I can understand that, I also have walked this journey with someone who was mentally unstable and did actually have mental illness. And I don't know if this is how it works in other states, but I know for a fact in Maryland, if you commit a crime and you are mentally ill, you are then considered NCR, not criminally responsible. So because you're not in your right mind, they're not going to hold you to a standard that they would if you were in your right mind. So I think it is important to have laws that protect people to say, look, they weren't in the right mind. They're going to be rehabilitated so that they can get the help that they need. But mental illness is actually illness. Like, you're not well in your mind. Okay, if this person is not well and we've done a thorough check and we can see that they're not well, instead of holding them responsible for the crime, we're going to make sure they get the help that they need so that they can be a person that's back on their feet and be a member of society that's productive and safe. But I also think that there are people who use mental illness, try to use it as a protective measure when they actually aren't mentally ill at all. I think there's a difference between being mentally ill and committing a crime and claiming mental illness when actually you're just hiding underneath that, but you're trying to use that as a protective measure so that you don't have to be held responsible for a crime that you did in your right mind. Granted, there's also a racial component involved because we have seen that happen where white people will be considered not criminally responsible for things that they did, or the news cycle will automatically say, oh, this is a crime where this person actually just had mental illness when it's directed towards Black people. But let it be the other way around. It's interesting how it's like, oh, they're just a thug and a criminal. I could go on for days on that. Nicole Avant was gorgeous, just absolutely beautiful. She was just the epitome of elegance and beauty. I want to say one of the Netflix Bridgerton characters was inspired by her. That's not far-fetched. Her son-in-law is co-CEO of Netflix, so that's not far-fetched at all to believe. One of the things, and this is, for me, it's one of those things that I'm just like, I wish people would stop doing. The last part that I would offer some pushback on, and I guess Nicole feels a way about millennials, which most people do. I'm a millennial, so obviously I'm going to feel away when I hear people talking about millennials in a not so loving fashion. I feel like it's become a part of the culture to speak negatively about millennials. And as a millennial, I don't like it. Even during the pandemic, people were blaming millennials to say we were the ones that were outside. I'm like, it's not us. It was Gen Z. It was not us. And I'm like, there's other generations at this point. Millennials are the ones that are inside raising babies and taking care of their parents. Their parents. Some of these baby boomers were the ones that were outside, if we want to keep it real. I'm gonna bring it back. But Nicole felt away about millennials doing something, and she mentioned it to her mother, and her mom said, no. No, she'd say, it's not them. Maybe they didn't have parents or positive role models to help them. I can't even say what's curious. No, she'd say, it's not them. Maybe they didn't have parents or positive role models to help raise them right. And we're moving on. One more line. I thought this was kind of interesting. As someone who was raised in the industry and had industry people all around her, I found it fascinating that on page 128, she was talking about Bill Withers. And Bill Withers, of course, he wrote Lean on Me. He wrote Grandma's Hands. He wrote a whole bunch of hits. And she was like, can you imagine what kind of deal with the devil any songwriter would make now to write something as great as that song? What do you know? We need another book on that. Please spill the tea. To hear her say that, I'm like, ooh, girl, I know you have stories. I know you have stories. You need to spill some of that tea in your next book. So, all in all, I enjoyed reading this book. It it just exuded Black excellence and resilience. Her willpower is what has a lasting impact on me at this point. Just being able to move through grief with grit, grace, and gratitude. I think those are the perfect ways to describe how she's navigating her process. And I love the way she ended the book. I want to end with this. She said, "We can't banish evil. We can't hide from misery. We all inevitably endure trauma and pain. How do we go on? Move forward? We have to learn to swim through trauma so that we don't drown. We have to live and live fully for all of those who can't. We must always choose the joy. Choose to swim. Choose to not go down with the ship." Thank you, Nicole, for this powerful message. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching today's episode. I really appreciate it. If you haven't done so, hit the subscribe button, and I will see you next week.